Well, we're going to get started. Everybody should have the PowerPoint handout and one of these sheets. And we're going to use these and create a sample sheet. And then you'll get a sleeve and you can take it back so you can remember the different materials. When we do a larger format, we have a lot more props with us, but we're a little more limited this time. And so we'll talk a little bit more about some of the things, but please ask questions and please contribute. If you've been working with a material or you have a question about a material or you thought of a good way to use it, feel free to speak up because this is just basically a worksheet. To start, I'm Nancy Odegaard. I've been at the Arizona State Museum for many, many years, decades now, and we're a campus museum, the University of Arizona, and I've been interested in preventive conservation, container storage. We have a lot of material culture. We are an anthropology museum, so we have archaeological items as well as ethnology and some artwork, a little bit of geology, a little bit of botany kind of together, and storage is just the issue all the time in museums, how to do it better, how to protect the collections. So this has really been the culmination of a lot of different materials, sort of good, bad, maybe. And that's why I've kind of reverted to the happy face, the sad face, and the neutral face. And it's because the short answer, it depends. It depends on if we're bringing something, somebody's just donating it and delivering it, they don't need an acid-free box for that. But if it's gonna stay in the storage room and it's sensitive for many decades and years, then acid-free is a good idea. So there's some things that depend, and our collections are so diverse. So by way of that, that's who I am. I've been in Arizona for a long time. My family moved to Arizona when I was still in grade school. Finished high school in the Phoenix area here and then moved away and then came back and now live in Tucson. So it's always good to be in Arizona. And my colleague, Audrey Harrison, will tell you a little bit about her.
Thank you, Nancy. Hi, good morning. My name is Audrey Harrison. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation. My ancestral homeland resides in Naizi, New Mexico, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you. I started working as a student in conservation in the late 1990s. Don't do the math. And it became pretty serious in cultural preservation, conservation, in 2003 about, and have been in the field since then. And so I contract out under the university with the Western Archaeological and Conservation Center with the National Park Service. So in addition to providing storage supports and adequate containers, in my line of work, I often will accept a project that may require a special housing for a NAGPRA piece. And so in that respect, some consultation may be appropriate, in addition to different types of materials used based on their natural characteristics or biodegradable properties. So we'll talk more about that later, but thank you.
Great. And Marilyn, you should stand near me because I've got the mic.
Okay. My name is Marilyn Poole. I'm currently a project conservator at the Arizona State Museum with Nancy. I've been working there going on close to 20 years, over the last 20 years, on various large-scale collections projects, ceramics. I've worked on issues of pesticide, studying pesticide history in the museum, and most recently basketry, storage upgrade, and conservation treatment. So we work quite a bit with all these different materials, working a lot of times to provide structural support, designing new supports for these objects to improve handling as well as their long-term support. And my background, I actually started out as a curator in small museums in the Pacific Northwest, and I got interested in conservation through a Park Service training class in Tucson. So I ended up coming full circle, moving back to Tucson, and until it's 120 degrees, I intend to stay.
Great. Gina, come stand here, I guess. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Gina Watkinson. I also work at the Arizona State Museum. I'm the laboratory coordinator there. I've worked there with Nancy for about 9 years at this point. I'm not originally from Arizona, I'm from New York, and when I moved out here it was a pretty big shock for me. I didn't know about the region or the culture, but since I've been here I've been really engaged in. I have a master's degree in American Indian Studies and a certificate in heritage conservation. And I work with Nancy and Marilyn on all different types of projects. I've taught this class with Nancy several times, and this is probably my 5th or 6th year here at ATALM. And so I want to say welcome to all of you guys for coming, and I think we'll have a good time.
Great. So we're just going to start. The format is that we're going to go to, hopefully this will work, we're going to go through the materials kind of hopefully it matches, and we're in the order that you can see on the worksheet. And so the PowerPoint handout follows the worksheet. And as we go through, we're going to get little sample materials. It's going to be easy. If you want to make a worksheet, it's going to be easier at the table where you can tape it down. And we've got some extra chairs. So you guys that would like to make a take home, come on up to the table. So we're gonna take a little piece of tape, and as we go through the materials, you're gonna put a little spot of double stick tape, and my colleagues are gonna give little pieces, and we're going to put the piece down, and we're gonna talk about it with the slide, giving some examples. Okay, and again, please comment or question. So I'm gonna just start now with polypropylene board. And a common name is Coroplast or Corex. Those are some of the registered trade names. This is the board that we often see in signage. It comes in big sheets. You can see the planks over there. In museums, we often see it as a storage box format. There's classes that talk about making boxes with it. If you buy it and make your own, you can get document boxes or other shapes. If you buy the sheet and make your own box, you sometimes have to tie it, or you can use hot glue, and you can make different types of containers. Here's showing the hot glue gun. Sometimes people use it as the backing piece on a painting or a framed work of art so that there's a little more lightweight, inert protection. Some of the companies are making boxes with dividers. So this product allows for a fairly rigid and safe material that would withstand the way, it replaces cardboard, essentially. And with cardboard, we have something that is damaged by rain and water or a leak. We also have something that tends to be acidic unless it's the acid-free cardboard. And all those little channels, these flutes that are in any corrugated board can sometimes harbor spiders or insects, and particularly we'll get to the cardboard, some of the problems. So this is the polypropylene board. It is not a good outdoor product. So you sometimes see it sold as porch awning material, even at a Lowe's or a Home Depot. But as a material, indoor material, this is a good museum material for a lot of our storage needs. Any questions? Everybody can hear me fine? Okay. The next one that on our list, and so everybody's got a piece and put it down. So again, anybody needs help, is acid-free cardboard. And this is actually acid-free board card. We're now with our first error with the sheet. So it's at the far end. I apologize. So this is, you see how it matches? So again, a happy face. This is a product that is often sold for libraries and archives as the archive box or as the file folders. And again, pre-made boxes fit very well with library archive formats. in a museum object context, we sometimes have a little difficulty and have to make a custom sized box. So Audrey is working with a large object in that picture. And with the cardstock, one of the things that we've found in our museum is using the trays with archaeological fiber, but making our numbers and inserting our tag numbers into this cardstock board. So this is the card stock and the barrier board. And you'll notice too in all these slides we have some kind of an image of how you'd see it in a catalog such as Gaylord, but most of the archival suppliers will carry it. So in looking at the format, we've tried to have a definition of way you can buy it and then some examples and the sources. So this is definitely a nice product.
I don't know if that's the right one. That's not in the right order.
Okay, I know it's not. Do you want to
Yeah.
test and see? Technical difficulty. It's ATALM.
Yeah, but it's not the final.
Oh. That is.
No, it's in this folder.
Sorry about that.
8,000 versions of that.
Well, we have lots of versions because we were working on controlling the amount of time we had. Okay, so I'm going to, Mike was going to start talking. I think I'm about ready to talk about acid-free cardboard. Yeah, question.
Nancy, is acid-free cardboard, is it considered neutral or acid-free?
Okay, that's a good question. So what we're going to hear with these paper-based products is acid-free, standard, and buffered. And so when we're thinking in terms of what we'd like to have for most materials is acid-free. And that's going to be a pH neutral. It's going to be close to 7. So you can be a little bit on the acidic side, which is a lower number, 6-ish, or you can be a little bit above, getting closer to 8. If you're at 8 and above, though, your product is buffered. Your paper-based product is buffered. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go through and bring that up again. But basically, acid-free, a buffered board or paper is in fact acid-free because it's not acidic. But the buffered means that it's above 8 and has an alkaline reserve. If it's standard, it may or may not be acid-free. And if it's acidic, it's going to be probably below 6. Okay, so our acid-free cardboard, people have seen this a lot and have ordered it. We can order this in plank format, large sheets, small sheets. We can order it very thin or a little bit medium, or we can get multiple plies where the board is actually processed in thicknesses. And this has to do with what kind of weight or rigidity we really are going to need. Typically, these are blue or grayish, but they don't have to be. They come in different colors. Hollinger makes a brown one that they claim is acid-free. And so we believe them. But you can see here the double. And we're going to talk about how we test because we have to be suspicious all the time with products. But some of the things that are done is making a support board for an object, padding it if necessary, and having ties. This is a concept that some museums have used with a conical basket, where you create this kind of box with a window and then create a little frame here, and the basket slides in. So you can actually look at the conical bottom through the window, but you don't have to lay the basket on its side and have a deformation. This particular configuration is something we've built here at the Arizona State Museum. We've used these sort of L-shaped pieces of this board, and created a kind of a rack. Down in the bottom of those insert areas is a pillow that looks like this. And we've designed this to fit on those large steel racks. So this box fits onto one of the trolley racks that you see in museum storage rooms. And we have put sturdy plaque baskets upright in Ziploc bags. And we can store 100 baskets on a pillow on the rack that can move. That would take up many cabinets. So we've tried to figure out how we can do that. They rest on a pillow and can be looked at. And I think we'll see another picture of that possibly. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So why, what are the reasons for choosing corrugated board over the acid-free cardboard? What is it cost or?
Sure, a standard cardboard box are that ubiquitous, right, in our life of the way things come, is acidic. And it will continue to get more acidic as it absorbs. The paper is a high lignin content paper that just by its nature is going to become more acidic. These boxes that are used and repurposed might have a glue or a tape, and that begins to fail over time. Another reason is that in the corrugation of a standard box, the adhesive that's used to hold it all together is often a bit desirable to insect pests. And so you've got a nice little safe home with, from their perspective, food. And so I don't know if people, maybe have had some experience with spiders in the box, but this is, a nice place to hide and to eat.
What about the difference between, I think she's talking about the acid-free board as opposed to corrugated?
I might have said standard.
Acid-free board.
Between the two, yeah.
So the smooth board, sorry, thank you for clarifying. So a corrugated board is going to have a little more flexibility. It's going to be, or it might be rigid. It depends on how those corrugations go. The smoother board is probably going to be better suited to a smaller box than a large box. But I would say that
The ease of making a box from scratch. So because it's corrugated, you can get a groove and it's easier to fold, whereas the hard acid-free board tends to be, you have to really score it. It's a little harder to make a box. So it just depends.
And the blue board, like Nancy was saying, has the different types of corrugated, so you can get a B or an E fluted cardboard, and as you go down, it's more rigid. So you have that versatility within the corrugated board that you wouldn't necessarily have.
And I would say that probably the corrugated is a little more economical. So these are just the range of choices that we have. So standard cardboard, when I mean standard, it's just what we see everywhere. This is going to be a generic cardboard that is a craft paper and has the flutes, mentioning again that sort of adhesive that can be problematic. Old days used as a backing on a photograph or a print, and perhaps you can see how the print picked up the acidic marks that were from this backing. That's because this is highly acidic, and this will transfer to porous materials and make them eventually acidic. So if we have cardboard tubes for our textiles, or cardboard boxes for our small things, or large cardboard boxes or backings, if we have organic objects that might be leather, paper, feather, these materials have a porosity that will allow an acidic material to leave an imprint. If we're packing, on the other hand, ground stone or ceramic sherds, we're not going to see that. So we're going to make a choice as to where, if we have limited resource, we want to put the acid-free materials for packing with our most sensitive objects, And the objects where it would be nice to have a nice box, but we can delay that if we can't afford it. And that's going to be the stone and the ceramic type materials that are more durable and are not going to absorb that acid. One of the ways people work with that, and here's Audrey working with an acid-free container. This is probably the polypropylene box, but it could be an acid-free container below, and then putting that in a packing box. So this is a partial solution, or it might be transport, or for if you're working where collections are going to be donated, or you're an archaeological repository and you have collections coming in that you are going to then process. Having them come in a standard box is fine. It's the keeping it for the long term that's a problem. So in our museum, we've moved collections from one storage room to another. We're going to move, say, 20,000 things. We might use standard boxes for that move, but that's going to involve just a couple days. We're not storing them for the long term under those conditions. So that's why the standard cardboard, I give a kind of a neutral, because this is a very durable material, easily goes in the car or the truck, but it's not a long-term solution. So, and I think we were on this one, and so we've got, everybody's got that. We finished the first row. I think we were mentioning that the card stock, you can buy tags from the archival supply companies. We've actually found it a little more economical to buy the folders and cut them up ourselves. And then when we create, so these are the blue board, the blue trays, and they're a bit of a sandwich. Now you all have a sample. Can you see that it's a bit of a sandwich on that last one? We use a little scalpel and make a little slice and then put the tag right down in there. So it's compressed and it's nice and snug, but it allows us to open a drawer and see. So if you had something like medals or coins or beads or lots of small items, this is a nice way to quickly find what you're talking about if that's the format you're using. And I will add, just with this product, this barrier board, sometimes it's acid-free all the way through, and sometimes it's a sandwich with a slightly acidic on the inside and acid-free on the outside.
Nancy, did you want to mention the ATALM?
We'll get to that. Let's do that with the tissue.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I don't know, we're limited in our budget, so when we're talking about acid-free, could we buy the stuff from Michael's in the interim kind of type thing?
What?
They have a lot.
They do. So one of the things, I was thinking to get more into pH when we got to the tissue paper. So let's pick that up and go over that again, because the whole world of this acid-free paper and who has it and where it is a worthy discussion. Okay, we're now on the second row. We're at foam core. And this is a material that you've got a little sample going around, but of all the materials I brought up, I did bring a piece. This can be really rigid and thick, like you see here, or it can be thin. This is a super lightweight material, and it can be acid-free paper on the outside or non-acid-free. The whole point is that it's really lightweight, but it's rigid. This one doesn't bend the way cardboard does. So we can have some of the different colors commonly used as the backing of a painting. You can come up later and see. Here we've got a framed artwork, and on the back, as a protective backing, the foam core piece is used. Boxes have been made, and we've got an example here that I'll show you with putting a basket or another object that has a weak base. We can give an artificial base for storage and kind of tie it. And it just gives us a little extra support for something that might be a little worn or weak at the bottom. You can see here. So this is really fast and easy to do. This is from a museum storage area where they were storing costumes in foam core. And you reach a point where it starts to sag. It's too big. So this, not so effective. You can see the tape is giving out, and there's all this bowing. So this box, and we didn't bring it along, but it's about this big, is using a thicker foam core, and it works reasonably well. This wasn't a full success, but so it's a great useful product. You just want to think in terms of, is it important that I have acid-free paper on it? And if so, I need to test and buy it that way.
So something like a jingle dress, which can be very heavy, you can place in there with.
You could, but I would go with the thicker rather than the thinner. So going to this, like almost a ½ inch or centimeter, you can come up and look at this. Buying this in a sheet, and these are sold in planks as well. So now we're kind of coming into this tissue paper. And this really covers, we're kind of now with the format of tissue paper. We used a lot in museums. This is going to be, for the acid-free, we're going to have a cellulosic product that's around pH 7. We're going to see this used all kinds of ways. Interleafing in documents that are on poor paper or old paper, in costumes and baskets, things where we want to maybe not have the crease be so full. We can fill in a sleeve, in a glove, in a number of ways with pieces here. Here's some photographs. This is usually sold cut in sheet for small items or on a roll. And you can see the roll there. And a lot of museums have, devices to hold these big rolls. So this is really a great material if you're using it with an acidic object, like an old book that's quite acidic. That acid will transfer. If you've used it as a barrier on a standard cardboard, you've lined the standard cardboard box with acid-free tissue paper, over time you can expect that paper to become acidic itself. So really great, and we like acid-free paper for almost anything. It's a great material to use. The next one is the buffered, and we brought it up, great question before. We're now going to be at pH 8 and above. This is what's called having an alkaline reserve that's been added, and it's an attempt to prevent that migration of acidic material. So this product is used especially with inherently acidic objects, newspapers, documents on poor paper. Think of the old paperback books that you've seen where the paper just crumbles practically. These acidic materials do very well with a buffered paper because they're going to take up some of that acid. So this is a great material for that. However, if your material is not acidic and it's not cellulose, we don't like to use buffered as much. So if we're talking about a hide dress, or we're talking about photographs, or we're talking about maybe fur and feathers, we don't recommend the buffered tissue as much. So it's going to be best suited with your archival collection. Okay? But it comes in different thicknesses, and it is hard to tell. So as soon as we get our sample next of standard tissue paper, we're going to do a little experiment with the pens that you see on the table. So the standard tissue paper is kind of a mystery. We often see it looking very similar to the archival. We can't tell by looking very easily. It's what's sold if you go to the department store and buy something and they wrap up your item in the shoe box or in the commercial item. We're going to probably see standard tissue paper because it's a lot less expensive. We're familiar with lots of colors and having colored. We avoid colored tissue paper in the museum always. And that's because almost always that color is very fugitive. That means if it gets damp or wet, it runs. And then we see colors that we didn't want on the objects we have. Not a huge fan of toilet paper, and that's because toilet paper is designed to dissolve when it gets damp and humid and is being disposed. And so we don't want that level of reaction right next to our object. So that's not so good. The sort of tissuey paper that a lot of things used to come in, this is an example that came to us, some Asian lacquer, and this material just sort of falls apart. This is an interesting situation, and this is, I'm commenting on the use of tissue paper. We think of using it to help support from inside, crumpling it up and stuffing it inside a sleeve or a glove or a legging or a bonnet or something. Be careful what you're putting it into. In this little basket that was already damaged, the concept, I think, was to put the tissue paper in to help it. The problem is that getting it out is going to break the basket up into pieces. So now the task is going to be to cut little pieces and tweezer, cut and tweezer and cut and tweezer to get this out safely. So if you're using tissue paper to be an insert, you want to be careful that the inside of the object you're using isn't going to be damaged. So in terms of an embroidery or perhaps beadwork stitching, might be good, but it might be a problem. So we might actually want to have a layer. So sometimes when we're doing fillings, we'll put a plastic bag inside and then put the stuffing so that we can more easily get it out. But these are, you have to think about it. So that's what's going on with these. The other comment I like to make with tissue paper is that there's this tendency to do a little mummy wrap, to just keep going round, 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 round. And in a museum context, we'd like to avoid that because the only person that remembers where the object is and what it is the one that put it in, and odds are it's somebody else that's trying to open it. So ideally, if you're going to wrap in tissue paper, you want to put the object down and come around and have that very clear opening on the top so that it might overlap, but you want to open it like this, like a present, and not round, 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 round. And that all that turning can be difficult for a fragile object. So we're on to the third row, helping with the tire. Acid-free glassine. Glassine's this translucent material. It's not the same thing as wax paper. So sometimes people see that or they think onion skin paper. It's a little different than that. The idea is that it doesn't stick. It's got a slippery surface. So you'll see it with stamp collections or small items, certificates, photographs, something that might have a surface that would want to stick. And it's important that that be acid-free if you're working with documents and photos. So an acid-free glassine does have an application. This one here is not acid-free. You can see how brown it is. And let me sort of back up because I forgot with the papers. So everybody's got access to one of these pens. It's called an Abbey pen. There's a couple different companies that make similar pens. It's a pH indicating pen. This is a great tool to have in a museum. So if you take the pen and with each of the papers, the standard, the buffered, and the acid-free, put a little dot over in the corner, or a little line is okay too. And take a look at the color that you get. And it's hard to see with that blue standard paper, I realize, but maybe on the white dot you can put the color. We would tend to see a brighter purple with the buffered. And we're going to see perhaps a yellow or a clear, more color with standard. And we'll see kind of a light purple with our acid-free. So if we're purchasing archival products for use in our collections, one of the things that people do is they test. They test the corner, and if they've got a bad product, they send it back. And there's a couple reasons. How could that happen? Well, they get a bad batch. Or maybe all that acid-free material was sitting in a standard cardboard box for long enough to have absorbed some of the acid. So whenever you're buying materials, it's a great idea to get a pH pen and do a test. Yeah?
Nancy, could you show me the colors again for acid-free, buffered, and standard?
So and even on the pen it'll say, but the buffered is more likely to give you a darker purple. And the standard tissue paper is likely to give you more a yellow. So we're going to get to, on this sheet we don't have old newspaper, but if we were doing old newspaper we would see a yellow mark. Now you could test your handout, the worksheet or the PowerPoint, and what you'll see is that today's printing papers are almost all acid-free. And that wasn't the case probably 15 years ago. So we are getting basically better paper than the paper we probably had in school when we were kids. Acid-free map board. So this is sorry.
Our buffered tissue is showing acidic.
It is. So caught us.
Like it's yellow.
It's yellow. Well, maybe they got mixed up.
Yes. Okay. First,
I got a yellow too.
You got a yellow, so maybe there's some bad tissue paper in with it. Do you want to give the people that got a yellow one for their buffered? Gina's going to give you another piece of paper and we'll try it again. But this is why you have to test. You cannot tell just by looking. So we brought lots of samples, so we'll try it. You tried, those of you that got yellow, you tried it on your worksheet paper too? Okay, so you see, the point is to see that the pen works. Okay, so map board. Map board is that material that, of course, is around the edge of framed works of art commonly. We make a window mat and a backing mat are the common ways to use this. It comes in what's called different plies, and it can come in different colors and still be acid-free. The convention, of course, is a white or an off-white, and we would tend to see it, but this is a nice way to store artwork that's on paper. If we don't use an acid-free material, we're likely to get what's called an acid burn. And can you see the line here? And then this is showing how that acid went into where it overlapped in the frame. Yeah?
How long would that take for the acid-free tissue to become acidic?
That's a good question. It is going to depend. So here we're looking at, and I'm going to use this as an example because you can all see it. So this is a watercolor, and it's done on watercolor paper, which is a sort of a porous textured paper. You've all seen that before. The idea is that when you take the watercolor, it does that beautiful sort of bleed into the paper. If we put watercolor on a regular piece of paper, it tends to sit like a little ball until it absorbs. So watercolor paper is very porous. Newspaper is very porous. So if you've got a framed clipping or something like that, it's going to be porous paper. If you were to take that porous paper and artwork and put standard cardboard behind it, like the picture I showed before, and an acidic mat, and you put it in an uncontrolled environment, and you put it where it's a little bit warm, all of that chemistry is going to speed up. you've got the perfect storm. You've got warmth and light and moisture, and chemical reactions love that. That's how you speed things up. And that's why this is going to be worse than if I were to put an acidic mat on my worksheet and had it around. It's going to take longer to see the damage on this because this paper is acid-free and it's not as porous as the artwork. But a lot of what we're trying to preserve is artwork that was done on construction paper. I mean, artists, and we're often poor. They still are, right? So they're not buying top quality papers, top quality boards. So that's why we're going to see a lot of artwork, a lot of documents, a lot of newspaper clippings that are on inherently compromised media. And it'll take, it's just faster with those.
Do you have, like when you're storing, do you put the date on there? And do you say every 5 years we have to, whether it needs it or not? Or?
You know, it's going to depend. Once you're in the museum and you're controlling more of the environment, more of the handling, you've taken away these acidic materials. My guess is that in general, in your career, would probably be fine. What we might see in another generation of people coming in is that we need to do an upgrade and replace. But I would say you're buying a lot of time by doing it well. We're now getting into foams, and there's a lot that can be talked about with foams, but we're going to try to get through quite a few concepts here. It's about the chemical nature. So. And the name. This one is a polyethylene closed cell. That means it doesn't have those big open cell windows, little bubbles. This is, if you're looking at your sample, it's really smooth and it's kind of tight. Common names are Volara and Plastizote. And this foam is a little more expensive than the open cell. But we have found it useful for many things. It's often used to separate items because it's very flexible and smooth. So here it's separating some objects. Here we have a military metal, and it's used as the support inside the plastic bag so that the metal isn't just crumpled. Here the textile's so weak that this has allowed us to keep it flat. This is some skeletal objects. It could be animal or human, but the idea is that this box here with the cavity cut is a very smooth, open, closed cell foam that creates the outline so the object doesn't roll around. And here with our sandal collection at the Arizona State Museum, through some testing, we've determined that that surface is enough friction so that the fragile fiber doesn't move around in the box. And we don't have to do any tie downs, and we don't have to handle things very much, but we can allow them to stay in position. This usually comes on a roll. It is possible to get it in different colors. It is used industrially. I would say that if you were trying to make use of it in an exhibition, you could, going with the black is a little easier on the eyes. More commonly in storage, behind the scenes, we tend to see the white. And it is used, because of its smoothness, sometimes it's nice to build a container and then put the layer of the closed cell polyethylene. But I have some samples up here where you can see a little more how that thickness, a little more density than some of the other foams. This is polypropylene foam and fabric. Sometimes PP or polypropylene, propene, or microfoam. And this one, you're going to notice, is has an unhappy face. So I'm mentioning this because it does come up. This material, and I often tell the difference because this one's kind of noisy. Can you hear it? As compared to polyethylene. A little more quiet. This one's crunchy and noisy. This is it becomes a problem because it's sensitive to ultraviolet light. So storage rooms that have fluorescent tubes all over, or if it's exposed to window, we're going to see some destruction. And this is a piece of foam that I couldn't even get to the meeting. It completely disintegrated. And this is not good to have this kind of situation with the collections. I've been sent some by other people at other museums, and it's just dusting away. So this product, the polypropylene foam, is not microfoam, is something we don't want to use in the museum because it breaks down in ultraviolet and with heat. So it has an unhappy face. But it was sold a lot in museums, and that's why I want you to know about it. And the other product here, the fabric, and are we sending that around too? Mm-hmm. So a lot of you that have been to conferences might have seen this product used in tote bags and in car covers. And maybe if you've gone to the dentist and had that bib and the thing that clips on, it's a kind of a fabric. That is polypropylene, and it is also not a good material to use in the museum. I mention it here because it's really used a lot in Latin America because it's so available. But we really don't want to recommend it. But you'll see if you've had the grocery bags and the totes that sort of disintegrate in the car, that's what this is. And here's just our shelf with the polypropylene on the shelf having a problem. Yeah, question?
So I teach students propylene good, styrene bad, but that kind of breaks that. So the issue, it's not that it's acidic or
Right.
It's pH balanced, but the issue is that it breaks down.
It breaks down. And you may have, if you've been doing that, sometimes little weight dishes in laboratory chemistry class or science class are polypropylene. Sometimes the containers, the carboys for liquids, water bottles have been made with polypropylene. The problem is that it turns yellow and it's UV sensitive. So we were just talking about the polypropylene, the first one, polypropylene box. So that's more stable than this foam. And so it's the format. But if you use the polypropylene out on your porch as a porch awning, it will break down because that's getting all the sunlight. But it's the form that makes a big difference. The boxes hold up a lot longer, and it's not a problem. This foam format and the fabric format seem to be causing a problem. So it's a little tricky. It's hard to have the short answer. You know, you guys have to think it through. Moving to the polyethylene open cell foam. So this is similar to the polyethylene closed cell, the Velara type product. This one's sometimes called ethafoam, and probably heard of it. We can get this down to extremely little and thin to very standard shelf liner style. People have seen it all the way up to big, thick planks and boxes. We can get this cut so that we have rings that can be used for storing objects. We can also make cuts and create storage supports that are fairly lightweight and durable. So this is a product that is used a lot. This is the same as the plastic bag material, but it's polyethylene open cell. And what layering, cavity cuts, pot rings, a variety of uses. I want to mention colored foams, and this would apply to colored plastic, whether it's a sheet or a bag. It'll apply to bubble pack, and it'll apply to foams in general. Foams have colors. And so just making note that by convention, the blue ones very often have a fire retardant. That's why we see it sometimes in construction uses. They're using it in homes, and that's because they've added a fire retardant to help out. Again, we don't really like having additives in the museum objects world, so we tend to avoid the blue. And it's not a rule, it's just a tendency that it's the blue. We also, if you've ordered computers or TVs or electronics, probably seen a fair amount of pink foam. And the pink, by convention, is often an anti-static foam. And you can imagine with electronics why that's kind of important. So we tend to avoid reuse of the pink foam. Okay, we got to move faster, I'm sorry. Black foam. So the black foam tends to have a charcoal additive. Charcoal's inert. So this is not one of those changing and coming off. This usually is fine. I would not worry about the black or the gray foam, okay? And that can be maybe a little more desirable if you're trying to accompany it with exhibition. Okay. And moving a little faster, polyurethane ether foam. So this is, you've got a little sample. This is going to be like the mattress foam, and we really do want to avoid it unless it's strictly for short-term packing. This is going to come in planks or different colors, and we can do sort of cavity cuts. But this foam, if anybody's seen old mattresses or pillows knows this dusts and it falls apart. Another foam that we sometimes see is the polyurethane ester. And this one more often is a little more open cell, a little slightly different texture. You'll feel it with your sample. And it's often used in cavity cuts. And we do use it for packing, but not for long-term storage. Getting caught up to what's called backer rod. And you might have seen some of this sold in the hardware store around pipes and such. Or sold by the archival companies is these tubes. Sometimes they're triangular or square or round. And this material gives us some flexibility. This is a polyethylene open cell foam, in this case with the charcoal. And we can make a ring and use hot glue to hold it together, or we can create supports. So you can see a little bit how this is being used. This one in conjunction with the foam core base and the ring. So polyethylene sheet, everybody knows about the plastic bags. And this is such a general purpose. We can buy lots of different sizes of the Ziploc bags. We can create containers. Here we're using it for a small find, making covers for large objects, or even bags for some of our basketry that has tinklers and fringe, so we can hang. Incredibly useful. The goal is to use what's called virgin polyethylene. There's a lot of recycling going on now with many types of products, and a recycled polyethylene tends to be little less transparent, translucent, and you might see streaks in it. So for long-term storage, we are recommending virgin polyethylene. This barrier film that's called common trade name sold in the archival catalogs is Marvel Seal. Marvel Seal is a combination of polyethylene and metal, and the idea is that it's a barrier inside a crate or can be sealed. If you've heard of the anoxic or the oxygen depletion way of killing insects, this is the container that can be used for that. Here's a bag, envelopes, and storage. So not to be confused, but another product is aluminum foil. Everybody can get that. Everybody's familiar with that. We buy it in a grocery store, and we can use this especially if we don't have a lot of funds at hand. We can take wood trays or wood drawers and put a lining of the foil because the wood is acidic and we don't want that acid transferring. So if we have old wood drawers or trays for things, we can create a barrier. We can also take cardboard tubes that are not acid-free, and we can wrap those with foil till we can get the funds to purchase acid-free tubes. So we can buy some time. I've been in several museums and archives that have beautiful wood cabinetry. And one of the solutions for the short term is line the drawers with foil.
Excuse me, how short is short term?
Well, I know places that'll have it for decades, but this is like making use of trying to, yeah. And let's say you want to get something into an acid-free tray. Well, you can't afford the acid-free trays yet. Line the drawer or the wood box and do that. Then as time goes on, create an inner box that is archival materials and maybe eventually get a whole new cabinet. But there's a lot we can do along the way, and the aluminum foil is a great solution.
What about the polyurethane varnish? Does that help with those inner cabinets of wood, or is that not?
It really depends on the ventilation there. One of the earlier products, a little bit depends on when that lining, that coating was put on. It used to be a urea formaldehyde coating, polyurethane formaldehyde kind of material. If it was done in that era, you tend to have some off-gassing of the formaldehyde. So it depends on what the product was, what the mix, when it was done, how much air transfer is taking place. But I would say that when in doubt, I know the aluminum foil is available. I know everybody knows how to use it and see it, and I just feel like it's something that's all around us. It's completely inert and something that we can do. Yeah.
So you can't use the heavy-duty one?
Yeah.
It's just the thicker thinner is just more versatile.
Use both. It depends on how big the sheet is and what you're trying to do. As a liner, sometimes the heavy duty is a little better because it doesn't break, right? So, and if you can get a larger format, then you don't have to splice it, so to speak. But we've used it a lot as we were trying to deal with before we could get acid-free textile tubes. I was covering the old tubes with it because I wanted the roll for the format, but I didn't have enough funding for the acid-free, so I bought some time with doing that. Okay, the polyester plastic. So that's Mylar. Everybody's heard of Mylar. Mylar is a polyester, and it's then in this film format. It comes in rolls. We also have lots of different container sizes. People have probably seen the encapsulating for documents, little sleeves for documents. We sometimes use it underneath objects that are on display so that they're not in direct contact with furniture. A lot of libraries make tabs. You can see here to open a page. Boxes, very, very useful material. This is the commonly called Teflon. This is a polytetrafluoroethylene, or PTFE. And this is, anybody ever bought plumber's tape? That nice white, this is what it is. It's now sold in larger formats. This is a very inert, slightly stretchy material that is, can be useful when surfaces are fragile. Powdery surface, a resinous surface. This ancient Roman glass with the iridescence on it is quite weak. We use it for a lot of different purposes, but mostly when the surface of an object is quite fragile in its own right. Another material that is a nylon film is commonly called Dartec, and it's kind of a slippery foam, film rather, and we can wrap textiles with it. A lot of times paintings on canvas use this because the paint won't stick to it. You can see it with photographs. One of the nice things about this material is the incredibly large format. It's about a 6-foot roll, so you have a lot to work with. Polyvinyl chloride, this is one of the unhappy faces. And this, we don't see this sold as much, but it was for a long time, and we're likely to find it in our collections. And that's the trade name Saran Wrap. It's that stretchy, anybody seen old Saran Wrap look real yellow on the tube? That's because it is breaking down the plasticizer that's been added to it that helps it be super stretchy, is beginning to break down. So we might see some of these blanket bags that start to turn yellow, coin envelopes. If you've got a collection that includes old photographic slides, some of those slide containers were a bad plastic. Here, sometimes artwork, artists would purchase it to protect their artwork when it was sold. So if you've seen artwork or the sand paintings that were made on the particle board format might have been covered to protect them, we would take that off. But this is an example of some of shrink wrap, and that's another one that's problematic for long-term museum storage. I just want to point out that this particular textile was stored in a folded in a plastic bag, and was right at the seam where that polyvinyl chloride was. And this fading is the chemical reaction with that polyvinyl chloride over a period of about 20 years, estimated. So we don't like that one. Another good one is a polyolefin, or the Tyvek. And most people are familiar with Tyvek envelopes from the post office, that papery, plastic-like paper. We can get it in a paper format, and we can get it in a textile format. And we tend to use the textile format quite a bit. It's also used in buildings. We make labels. We make little pillows. Here's that configuration for the baskets that I mentioned earlier with the pillow down below. We separate objects that are being stored, stacked temporarily by putting a layer, and we make labels with the Tyvek, and that proves useful. This is Tyvek paper up here. It's had the black added, and we use a little bit of that when it's in an exhibition setting where we want the black to work. Nomex. This is a product that is sold in the archival supply companies. I consider this more a temporary, not a long-term product, but it is a good way to potentially wrap things for transport. It's very soft and flexible, so it folds around things. Polyethylene bubble wrap. Everybody's heard of bubble pack, punch the bubbles. Again, think of the colors. Don't want to use the pink or the blue. A problem, it's sold everywhere. Sometimes the inside bubble is polyvinyl chloride. And so we're a little bit cautious. Not always, so it's not a rule, but there's usually 2 layers that hold the bubble. This is a temporary product, and when you're using it, don't put the bubble towards the object surface. Put the smooth side towards the object. The reason is that in wrapping, things like a pitched basket or a painting or a furniture item that might have a glossy surface can pick up the impression. And this is a close-up of the impression on an object with these bubbles that aren't part of the object. And these dots here are examples of bubble wrap right on the surface. So again, if you're wrapping, this is a little hard to see. This is a statue. But if you're wrapping with bubble wrap, try to put the bubble on the outside and try to avoid color. Polyester fabric. So if this is from a fabric store, this can be useful. This is inert. Avoid colors, but it's possible to buy bags or use the fabric. Read the label. Look for 100% polyester if you're going to use it. This can be a nice slippery material for making an insert pillow or for making a bag to hold something where you want that slipperiness. We sometimes take the fabric, we wash it, but it's nice smooth material, and we can wrap it around a foam ring and create something that will work for an exhibition with some of the other products. And these non-wovens, you might hear of Hollytex or Rime. These are non-woven. That means they're just sort of more like the format of a felt, where it's just spread, the fibers create this mesh. And these can be useful for being supports where you want to see an object. And here we have where we can put it under layer and use it to transport or move a textile or a dress or a costume. Muslin, lots of muslin. The trick here is buying non-woven, I'm sorry, let me back up, buying unbleached muslin from a fabric store and washing it before you want to use it. And the reason is that there's a size that helps hold it onto the bolt, that stiffness. You want to wash that out.
When you're washing, do you use laundry detergent or is it just the water?
I do the first wash with a little bit of detergent, and then I do a rinse with just plain water, the best water I can get.
And no fabric softener at the end?
No, no, just a little bit. I use a warm water with just a little bit of detergent to get that size out, and then I do a rinse in the best water I can get, and then I let it air dry. You can use a dryer, that's not a particular problem. We've found that with some of the boxes or bags, items undergoing repatriation, that we will be requested to use muslin bags because it's non-synthetic. But many museums have used it as a support. We use it often to mount our textiles as a backing, rolled textiles. Here a little format bag, and museums that might have costuming that's out in the open, creating kind of a little stall that can come out and cover overnight becomes a nice way to use muslin. Caution though, muslin is porous. It's going to absorb dust and dirt, but you can launder it and put it out again. A lot of people that started using muslin in this way have found that the fabric Tyvek is a good alternative. Cotton batting, and this doesn't have a happy face, and this is because it's got this texture. It's a nice harboring place for insects. It tends to dust and pull a little bit more. So here's an example of some archaeological fiber. It took us months to undo because it's charred. It just pulled it away. This was packed in the 1940s. It's probably the best they could think of at that time. These are cotton balls, recently acquired. These I don't like as much. The alternative is going with the polyester. And that's because this is very inert. And we can get it as batting that's in a layer, or we can get it as the fiber fill. And this then becomes a material that isn't absorbing moisture from the air and is not as, the fiber is not as attracting for loose fibers, loose things. And very quickly then, stockinette. This is a product that anybody ever broke their arm or something saw that that knit that's below. Stocking knit comes in a couple different sizes, and we've been making pot ring bumpers with it, but it also can be used to be pillows and supports. The cotton twill tape, sold by all kinds of, in fabric stores or archival supplies, allows you to do ties. The box, it'll roll, very useful material. And the peanuts, so we're down to the last two things, hitting the dot, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Polystyrene in the form of the peanuts is not as stable because it tends to dust. Anybody had old polystyrene sort of dust in your hands? Another problem is the format if it's used in and around something with dimension. They tend to get caught. So I wouldn't use it stuffed in around, say, this frame here. I would avoid color. However, there is a use, and that is if it is completely sealed in something else, you can insert it to fill the space. Or if you had a basket, for example, that was soft and collapsing, if you were to take a plastic bag and put it in, you could then put the peanuts inside that and be able to get some support. Very, very lightweight. But again, careful how you're using it. And the starch peanuts. And these have come on the market, and we tend to see them. We don't recommend these in museum use. These are nicely biodegradable, but there's a problem with that in that if we take it and we put it into water against the other one, it will begin to soften. It starts to get a little slimy. And I had done this a little bit earlier, so it's a tiny little object, but this is stuck to it. And I've had several museum situations where I've come in, been asked to come in and help with sculpture that has peanuts stuck on the surface. So in the museum, we don't want to use those biodegradable peanuts at all. They're a problem. And that takes us to, and this is showing this, you can see a heavy object in any kind of peanuts is going to move around. That's not a good way. And believe it or not, this was sent to our museum more than once, real popcorn. So real peanuts, real popcorn, not a good idea. But that makes common sense to all of you, but I'm amazed. We still have that happen. And that is all the slides, you guys. We've made it through the sheet. You can get a sleeve from the back and put your sample, and we went through a lot of material really fast. But with your handout and with your sheet, you can at least go back and start recognizing some materials. And thank you for bearing with it this whole time. We just did it. So thanks.